So I'm Jim Wellings. I'm an independent control system programmer, independent designer, and whatever you want to program. DSPs, audio DSPs. Until about a year ago, I was with Utah State University, and I snuck out the back door and they didn't say anything. So a bunch of my colleagues are here to heckle. So I had to take a second before we started to look around and see what they had in the room. So it looks like Extron, but I'm not sure the panel is completely functional back there. There's a control missing. At least something that I saw was a control missing. I don't know if I want to blank the video on the screen. I didn't see a button to do that right off. So I wanted to do that and see what it did when it did that. So I'm going to talk about UI and how it affects UX. So I called it UX versus UI. We're going to use UI to completely destroy our UX. This is what I did daily when I worked at Utah State. Let's see how terrible of an experience we can make it for the user. Not intentionally, of course. We don't want to do that, but that's what we end up doing. And on that note, I've got a fun restaurant panel to show you. This is a legacy panel from Utah State. And I'm not going to mention names who did this. I will say that I did not do this. This is a control screen that operates a Cisco C90 codec. And interestingly, if you look down on the bottom, look through the massive list of buttons that most of them make no sense. Down here on the bottom, we see C60A and C60B. Those are two other Cisco codecs that were in this room. So if you believe it, this room had 3 codecs, and you can control them all from this panel. Not a huge panel. It's about a 6-inch panel. So imagine trying to hit these little buttons. It's like me when I use my wife's phone. I have a big phone. It's not big enough for me. I like larger buttons. I like big buttons, and I cannot lie. Sorry. Here it is in the wild. So it's very colorful. It's very confusing, and it's on a wireless panel. So when the facilitators in this class used to use this panel, they would pull it off the dock and they'd hold it in their lap, which is great. I mean, that's a good idea. Nice to be able to do that. But that can be its own sorts of issues. And I have to zoom in here on the upper right. Touch panel to operate. How many people have a sticker like this? Touch panel. You don't really want this. Okay, if you have to tell people to touch it to operate it, there's something wrong. And admittedly, this is an older restaurant panel that did not have proximity detection. So the new ones, you can all turn that on. So if you walk up close to it, it'll light up and you can see what you want to do. But we need to do better than this. And in all fairness, this is a really old panel, and the guy that programmed it is a video engineer background. He's a techie guy, not a programmer. And he really didn't like programming. He did not enjoy the process or what he's able to do with it. So what do your users tell you? Do we have any faculty in the room? Are we all tech people? No faculty? Part-time faculty? Faculty.
Everything okay? No.
Oh, no, you're good. Okay. I thought he was going to do these faculty. You're faculty. Okay, so I'll be careful what I say. But no, what do faculty usually tell us that they want a room to do? This is what I remember that we hear most. I just want it to work. What they don't tell us, but what we know is an issue, is that they don't want to be embarrassed in front of their students. They don't walk in and punch buttons and things don't work, and they try to bring up their laptop and the screen goes up. All the terrible things that can happen if you're not familiar with the technology in the room. And they're not going to admit they're not familiar with it. They're a tenured professor, they know lots of stuff, but maybe they don't have the tech background. So, Deep Space Nine, anybody old enough to watch Deep Space Nine? Ferengi rules of acquisition. These are my Jim's AV rules of acquisition. Rule number 107, your touch panel has too many buttons on it, unless it has too few. And on that note, our old, do we have Idaho State folks here? And I just saw, yeah. So your university president, Robert Wagner, was the head of our department at Utah State for a long time. And Robert worked on projects with us to improve technology and improve the way people can use it, improve the user experience. That was a big push of his. And he had a magnetic personality, meaning that if he walks near a piece of tech, it's going to explode. It's going to break. If you could figure out a way to break it, and Steve knows this is how we used to test equipment. We would install it in his office. And then we'd see the failure modes, and then we'd be able to fix it. So I built him a touch panel as a joke. He liked it. Dumb, okay? Big mistake. So I gave him this, he's like, I want that. No, how are we gonna do that? So we may not be able to do that necessarily, because what's wrong with this? What happens if I walk in the room and I see this? What if I'm not Robert? I don't know what to do with it. What if I am Robert? I walk in, I'm not really sure what's gonna happen when I hit that button. It might open a trap door. It might drop an anvil on me from above. I don't know what's gonna happen. So this is not great. More communication is probably better than this. But what he liked about it, the user experience of walking in and having the room ready for him and set up for him, we can kind of do that. There are ways that we can do that. I don't know if anybody was in the University of Puget Sound just now. I threw about half of that. That's actually kind of cool. So for a multi-purpose space, you can actually go in and get some guidance on how to use that. That's cool. Talking with Steve, I don't think that it ever work in a classroom because a professor is going to walk in and go, I don't want to do that. Punch. Where's the button to bypass all this stuff? So what we need to be looking at is kind of a process of universal design. There are a couple of reasons for this. So universal design, we want it to be usable, simple, intuitive for as many users as possible. And another sidelight of this is this also helps you with disability accommodation. We need to be thinking about that when we do these panels and control systems. And I'm as big a culprit as anybody, and I'll get into some of the stuff that I do that's wrong. Why are these characteristics specifically important, especially reliability, intuitive and reliable? Ask your help desk. They are going to tell you why it's important. So here's one of our USU help desk people sitting behind a screen looking at lots of stuff. She can see classroom camera. She can see the virtual touch panel for the room. She can see the status of lots of different stuff in the room. And she'll get a call. First line of defense, she'll get the call from the professor in the classroom. She's the defense first line, or the moat, if you will, to prevent them from getting to tier 2 and tier 3. So unless they write to their department head, talks to the dean talks to your department head, and they come and yell at you. So one way or another, you're going to hear about it. If they're having an issue, the service desk takes that call. The instructor tells them it's not working. Poor service desk person goes, okay, I'll try to help you with that, but what's not working? They say, the Crestron is not working. Why? Because the Crestron touch panel has a logo right on the bottom that says Crestron. So immediately, that's everything that's in the room is the Crestron. This happens all the time. And the next response to her next question would be, no, I don't have time to troubleshoot that with you. Send somebody over. Click. And that's the interaction with help desk. So if we can make our panels simpler and easier to use, less confusion, and that was actually one of the things that I liked about his presentation just before us, the guided information on the panel. It shows you pictures what some of the items are, and it introduces you to the language, the esoteric language that we all use, like what's the HDMI? I don't know what that is. Is that something I plug into my laptop? And we'll talk a little bit about language later as we talk about accommodation. So some of the design goals for universal design, and I'll give you a trigger warning. I got the I word up there. You might hear me say the equity word too, so apologize in advance if that bugs you, but this is actually important. You want an inclusive environment, meaning that everybody that walks in the room, no matter what their background or what their experience with tech is or what their situation is, they should be able to at least kind of figure out what's going on and not be intimidated by it. So as far as accessibility, the ADA tells us that we must provide equal access and reasonable accommodation for people with disabilities. And I actually found a good definition of accommodation. It's the material practice of making social and technical environments and texts as readily available, easy to use, and understandable to as many people as possible, including those with disabilities. So if we're using a touch panel in a technical communication mode, if we get into that mode, and I apologize because I'm actually a master's student in technical communications at the moment, so I might digress into English. This is a communications device, the touch panel. We're communicating with the user, so, and it's a text, no matter what it is. If it's images, if it's words, if it's a layout, a graphic layout, all those can be considered texts for the purposes of technical communications. What are some of the challenges that people might have using your systems? So disability-wise, you might be looking at people with visual, auditory issues. They might have issues with touch. Maybe they can't touch a small button on a touch panel and get a reasonable response from it. I don't know what my deal is, but if I try to touch a capacitive touch screen like an iPad, I have to wash my hands right before that, or I have to clean off the screen, or because I'll touch the button and nothing will happen. I was told by a guy, I do some TV broadcast work, and one of the trucks I was in had an iPad for playing back interstitial music. And I would hit this thing and pound on it, and I could not get it to play. And the engineer in the truck told me, "Oh, you've got dead fingers." I said, "Wow, buddy." Okay, but anyway, I digress. So in language is the other part of this, and I mentioned that we're communicating with these devices, touch panels in particular. We rely on language to understand it and to communicate properly to the users. And I will say that one of the things that we discussed in my classes, we may not consider ourselves disabled, but hey, we're all going to get that way at some point. We're aging. I mean, I wear glasses, so I don't consider that a disability, but it is a challenge. If I were in this room with this screen, I probably would not sit in the back because I'd be like, ugh, just squint to see that. So what are some solutions to accessibility? Our usual reaction to accessibility is a retrofit or an accommodation by request. Okay, student walks into a disability resources office and says, "I need some help. I have issues hearing. What assistance could I get in the classroom?" And I'm gonna kind of point a finger at a lot of state school disability resource offices, and I'm not naming names. Don't get me in trouble over there. But to get an accommodation, a student has to walk into the disability resource office and say, "Hey, I have an issue. Could I get some help? These are my classes this semester." They have to fill out a bunch of forms, and they may have to prove their disability. They may have to bring a doctor's note. That really appalled me when I heard that. You can bring a doctor's note? What the heck is this? And it's not just one school, it's more than one school. And the other thing I found out, just reading the website, you can see this. If you walk in and you need an accommodation for one semester, great. Next semester, what do? You're automatically covered? Nope, you gotta go in and do it again. Walk in again, here's my new classes. You gave me these accommodations last semester, I still need them, still here. Okay, so that's, it's technically referred to as a retrofit, okay? It's an accommodation by request. You want to make your legal liability disappear and make the disability go away. This is the goal of the administration. They don't want to get sued. A student or somebody asking for these accommodations, they can suffer from something they call access fatigue. So if you have to go in every semester and do this, I got to ask and ask to get this. I'm just tired of asking. I'm not going to bother anymore. I'm just going to suffer with not being able to hear the instructor well. I'll try to get a seat in the front of the room. You know, I'll sit for the front if I can't see as well. So, not super good. In a universal design process, we want to try to avoid as many of these things as possible. So, how do we do that? Participatory design. So when you're designing a project, the users should be involved in that. And if you have some users with differing abilities, then hey, get them involved. Get a person from the Disability Resource Office in there. There's two sides of this too. There's the student side. How are you accommodating the students in the room? But there's also the instructor. Maybe you have an instructor that's got an issue. And you're going to get nothing but complaints from that instructor if you're not helping them out somehow or other. So, universal design, I would emphasize here, is a process. Okay, it's not a checklist. We use checklists because of EDA, but it's a process. So you've probably all heard of WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. A lot of universities are working on this frantically right now to meet a deadline that's coming up. I know USU is. They're captioning the crap out of everything online and they're changing things. So there's another part of this, WCAG2 ICT, and that is for specifically relates to non-web information and communications technologies. And hey, what's that? To me, that sounds like a touch panel. Like, uh-oh, do I need to be worried about this? I don't know. Legally, it doesn't specify touch panels, but maybe I need to think about it when I'm building a touch panel. So, as we look at some of the WCAG content guidelines, you know, some of them apply, specifically like color, contrast. So, if color is used as the only means of imparting a status or a function on a panel, then you're probably not doing it right. You could be excluding some people that can't see that. And at USU, we have a staff facilities architect that we've worked with forever. And I only found out last year, worked with him for years and years, I only found out last year that he is red-green colorblind. Not the correct term to use for it, but he cannot distinguish the difference between red and green. I didn't know that. I just thought he was never really that interested in the stuff that we did. And he didn't care about the touch panels and stuff. He just wanted to see how we install stuff and how it looked. But that was surprising to me. And there are more people around than you think of that they have these kind of issues. So as you think about a universal design, it's nice to try to think of these things ahead of time. So what beyond that do we do? Best practices. If we think that touch panels are kind of part of that, sure, we can use some of the web content guidelines to look at things like font sizes, contrast, color, like I mentioned. If we have buttons, we need to think about how big that touch target is. You know, and they're hit the font of all knowledge, Google, to see some specs on what button sizes should be. So how big does something need to be, the particular resolution or panel size for me to be able to touch it? And again, I might be excluding people if I just follow the basic guidelines, because I'm assuming everybody's normal, no. Everybody may not have the same ability to touch the same size target. So just something to think about. So best practices beyond that. And as I mentioned, we build a UI, it's a communications task. So we can apply the 7 C's. We can sail the 7 C's, as it were. Stop being a pirate. 7 C's of effective communication. So your message should be clear and easy to understand. Coherent. Things should flow logically from one thing to another. One of the good points that he had in that presentation just before ours in the other room, he mentioned buttons in different rooms. Always put them in the same place and from page to page. So Avixa used to call that a dashboard for controls, right? So it's like you sit in your car and you have a dashboard. You know where everything is. Speedometer's here, the radio's here. That's really all the controls you need. So a dashboard, things are familiar and in a comfortable place, and you understand that. So logical flow and structure. It should be concise. Language and text should be brief and to the point. Avoid unnecessary language, especially jargon. So as you get into, HDMI input, HDCP, we have a button that turns HDCP on and off. What is that? That, fortunately, is on a subpage that usually the techs get to and mess with. But if it's out there for the user, make sure it's understandable and you're not using your jargon that you use all the time. Use something that they can understand. Message should be correct, complete, and it should be friendly and courteous. And he had a silly example there with Dunkin' Donuts. Hey, thanks for ordering a donut. So you're not going to maybe go to that extreme on a professional touch panel, but don't be rude, I guess. Like that first touch panel I showed you, the C90, the Cisco touch panel, that was a pretty rude touch panel. Okay, so we talked about accessibility. If we look at these potential barriers again, I mentioned visual, we need some visual barriers. And if you have an issue seeing red and green, okay, this is a test for that. I can read that. I don't have that issue, but maybe somebody in here can't quite see that there's a picture of Grover from Sesame Street right in the corner. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what it is. It's a 5 if you can see it. What common design decision, and I mentioned that I do some of these things, I'm bad at this one. What common decision do we make that might cause an issue here? Button on-off states and power controls. Red and green. Okay, red is off, green is on. Who does red off, green on? Everybody have one of those on their panel? Okay. If I cannot distinguish the difference, and it's actually called red-green color deficiency, is the correct term for it. If I can't distinguish the difference, then I don't know if the button's telling me if it's really on or off. It's apparently pretty common in men, and it affects about 8% of the male population worldwide. So we may have somebody in this room that has that problem, or you may know somebody, or you're related to somebody who has a problem. So think about other ways to impart that that information. So here's an example. Here's one button with 2 states. There's the off on the left and the on the right. Okay, it's just a mute control, but if I accept the convention that maybe that button that says I'm going to turn it off or mute it is on the left and the on is on the right, okay, I kind of get that. But some other way of showing that would be good. And there are lots of other, if you look at web options, web page options, lots of other button things you can build. The one I just showed you is a built-in Crestron graphic. Okay, so we do something like this, the upper left one, which is the slide toggle. It's got green in it, but it has a slide that slides left and right, and it darkens when it's off, and it illuminates when it's on. Cisco. Zoom interface. Okay. So, and they're black and white. It's like illuminate white when they're on. So you can build these, you can create these if they don't exist in the standard graphics you get with a control system program. A checkbox. The one I kind of like the one on the bottom. So it has a green check, so it has a check when it's active, and it has an X when it's off. It also slides left and right, and it's also green and for on and unilluminated when it's off. So there's 3 ways of interpreting what that control means, and hopefully anybody who might have a problem with it can judge. So you're relying here on contrast and position rather than color. So this is another thing you can do, which people are going to take me to task for, especially since I told you that your button has too many panels. Or your button has too many panels. Close. Reverse that. Your panel has too many buttons. I'm telling you to add a button. Right? So you're going to split your single power button into an on and an off. If you do this and you use contrast and the label, there's really very little doubt about what it's doing. The off button is illuminated, the on button is not, so I can safely assume it's probably off. And if I change the state, there you go, now I know what it's doing. And I should, I did this without doing red and green. You can do any color as long as your contrast shows what it's doing. You can build a panel for Weber State. Okay, those of you in state are going to get this. Purple. Okay. I used to get hassled about using purple for things at Utah State as well.
I've been told the only color you can use on your UIs is red.
So, and there's also at Utah State there's an issue with blue. There's BYU blue and Aggie blue, and there are 2 different colors.
Just want to drop off these waters for you if you're thirsty.
Oh, great, thank you. You didn't bring enough for everybody. Sorry. So, where was I? Yes, contrast and position. So what else could we do here? I mentioned auditory challenges. Another visual resource you could do here. Somebody who's visually impaired, something that might help them if they have a tough time even seeing the contrast, and some people do. I could have an audio confirmation. So I could have a beep when a button's pressed. Some of the projectors will beep if you leave that feature turned on. When you mute them or unmute them, or when you turn them on, they'll provide an audible beep. You can do a button click sound on a lot of touch panels. You press a button, it gives you an actual click. On your phone, you're used to having the ability to have haptic feedback. Touch panels don't have that. I don't think any of them do that I know of yet. Maybe that's something they can consider. So haptic feedback, having it actually vibrate subtly when you press a button might be a thing. Any other suggestions on auditory? Feel free to jump in with comments, because we're trying to be a little participatory here. Any other accommodations you can think of you can do for helping somebody that's visually impaired? The other thing that a lot of touch panels will do, I think Extron will do this, and Creston will do it. I can actually have it play an audio file when I press a button. So I can press the on button and have it play a file where somebody says, "You turn the projector on," and then please wait till it, don't press the button again, wait for it to come around. It kind of digress there a little bit too for user experience wise. What do you have to do when you turn a projector on? You have to wait. Even if it's an LED projector, it takes it a few seconds to come up and show an image. So what's the user going to do? They're going to come and mash that on button 6 or 7 times until they see something happen. So a confirmation like a beep, something like that, or having the button change states when you press it is important for that feedback. There can be an issue there too as well that I should mention. So there are 2 kinds of feedback. There's the feedback you get when you press a button and it changes color. It's just the panel or the program doing that. The other kind of feedback is you press the button, it sends a command to the projector says, "Yes, I turned on," and it sends a message back to the control system, and the control system sees that, interprets it, and lights the button up. So what could be the problem with that? The delay. So you press the button, nothing happens. Okay, they're going to mash the button 50 times until the projector finally says, click, I'm on. So one of the things that people can do that I don't do enough, this is another thing that I do wrong, I don't do a warm-up counter or a progress bar on waiting for the projector to warm up. You can do that. Some projectors, you can get that information from the projector and actually have a real-time slider. The projector tells you that it's warming up, and when it quits, the bar goes off and the on light lights up. Another thing that you can do is have a way that shows two states, and this might be a little more confusing for a user, but I could press the button and I have it highlight, the on button highlights, and then when the projector actually turns on, it illuminates in a different color.
Ours actually blink for 30 seconds till we get true feedback.
Yeah.
And if that true feedback never comes back, so let's go back to a.
And that's less annoying than a bar, maybe. I never liked the progress.
Well, we tried the bar, and people thought that the bar actually meant the projector was responding. Where when it gets to the end, they were like, oh, it never came on.
Yeah. So the progress bar that I mentioned, you can get that kind of feedback from some projectors. Some of them you don't. And the programmer will sit there and go, he'll look at his watch. Okay, it took it 22 seconds to come up. So he builds in a 22-second timer to run the progress bar, but it's still not giving you real feedback. You don't know if anything happened or not until you see that the light came on and your image is there. So I tried an experiment just to see what would happen and see how many of these maybe visual cues or layout issues I might have if I had AI create me a panel layout. I'll make an AI statement. No AIs were harmed in the construction of this slide. It took 30 seconds. It used 4 megawatts of electricity, so if your bill goes up, you know why. So it did some interesting things. I gave it a very simple prompt. I told it to give me a display power on, display power mute, AV source select with those 3 sources, and a room volume and mute control. And this is what it came up with. It's an ugly layout. All the blocks are the same size, and they're not necessarily in order of how you might want to see them, how you might consider their importance. And there's another issue. So and feel free to tell me if you guys see anything else here, but some things bug me about this, like I like the display power having the word on illuminated. Okay, that's okay. It's also lit bright blue, which tells me that it's on. I'm assuming it's on. But how about the display mute? It says display mute off. But here's where we get into the language. So this projector, the display mute is off right now, meaning the projector is working. The projector is on and projecting. But that symbol has a string with a line through it, and the button is dark. Okay? Does it really mean that the mute is off, or is the projector off? What is that telling me about the state of it? So I think I would have handled that a little differently. I would have I would say, image active or something to tell people that it's actually working, and then when they press the button, maybe it flashes or turns color. And on a lot of the touch panels that I've done, I actually have a bar come up that says, the image is muted, a huge bar across the screen and a countdown. And if they don't release that mute in 25 seconds, the system will do it for them. Because because the instructor will hit that mute button and they'll talk to the class about what's going on next week and here's what we need to do, and they'll walk out the door. Leave the projector muted. And so the next person comes in, the projector's muted, the panel says it's on, but now I don't know what's going on. They hit the on-off button, nothing happens. So we try, and you know, they'll go away and leave it that way all night too. It could be that way the next morning. So, yes.
Another thing I was going to mention is clear back when you first started about the Nike Youth that you selected. So the question for me is, what's that representing? Is it its current state, or is it the state I want it to do when I touch it?
Yes. This is the perpetual argument of programmers and users. Is the button showing me the function I want it to perform, or is it showing me the current state? And we had that discussion with Robert at Utah State. Yeah, I think it was about projection screens. Do I want the button to show me that if I press it, the screen will come down, or do I want it to show me that it's up or it's down, and I press it to change the state? So that's where you get into the two
I'm not
buttons.
familiar with Crestron, but it's like the model we have, I can change the text of the button.
Yeah.
So if I have press to mute, and then I can change the text to say press to unmute.
Yes, press to unmute. Yes,
But I
that's a
also
good.
use a color in there too. But
That's a good solution. Yeah, so language is super important. That's a confusing control.
And language has been changing over time too, because if you notice, way back in the day, we used to call it blinking a projector instead
Yes.
of muting it. But now we have a video mute on Zoom, and so everybody understands what video mute is now. And so
All of a
but
sudden,
if
somebody's
you're-
taught people what
But if
video
you're
mute
glancing
is.
down really quickly and you're like, I want to mute myself, you're going to see two mutes. Yeah, versus, and now your brain has to distinguish, do I want audio, do I want video, or, so it might be better to go back to blank projector or screen off instead, and then keep the mute for audio, or just kind of
Yeah.
depends on your end user as well, but keep up with current trends. of
I've always
who
been bugged by,
understands.
the term mute for
Yeah.
projector video.
Interesting.
It's mute, I'm an audio guy, it's audio term to me. And what does mute off mean? Does it mean the channel's off, there's no audio, or does it mean I haven't activated the mute control? And a techie guy probably figures it out, but a novice user maybe doesn't know what the heck.
that speaks back to consistency across your whole campus. Because once someone figures that out, then
Yep.
they can learn that, oh, this is how it does it.
I was just gonna say about blank screen, I actually use the term black screen. Because then the black screen is on or the black screen is off, right? You know it's black because you can tell it's not on there, right? I also find that the mute thing is super annoying. Yamaha now uses on their channels. They don't use mute on their channels. So all of the stuff is backwards every time you program one.
Yeah. I have a Soundcraft board, it's the same, kind of the same thing. Wait, the button's lit up. Is the channel on or is it muted? Okay, so, one more real quick. I modified my prompt and I said, take this panel and make it unnecessarily complex. And that's the only prompt I gave it, based on the same input. I said, this is what it came up with.
I like that.
And oh my, it looks like that first one I showed you, except it's more neatly laid out.
That's what we call a technician page.
Yes, it's like a service page or something maybe. It does have a couple of things I like though. And actually, so I'm going to pop back really quick. So notice what else it did on the laptop button that's eliminated. So my laptop's selected. There's a blue bar down the left-hand side. Okay, that's kind of cool. That's another indication that maybe I don't get what the colors mean, but you see that bar there and it's bright, and none of the others have that. So okay, it's on. The other thing that I've done on my panels sometimes is I'll do a bar or an indicator like that on the button. The button highlights to show you which one's selected, but that bar tells you that there's video there. Okay, so it's either an error color, like here we go again, red and green. Gives you green if it's working, and it's red if it's not. If you plug it in your laptop, you know it's going to come up when you switch it, if it's got a green bar. So I thought that was okay. It just did that on its own. It also gave me a help button. They didn't ask for it. A clock, which they didn't ask for, and a settings button. They didn't ask for any of that, and they gave it to me, which is probably good. I have a lot of those on my panels. In this context, the home button means nothing because it's not going to take you anywhere. But, that's something you could reasonably have depending on your design. So, yeah, back to this one. But one thing I like, there's a video preview window there. So presumably if I've selected my laptop, then I'm going to see a little preview image of it. I like that. I think that's a useful thing, and it's something we could actually do with a lot of the new techniques. Okay, so I should move on. So complicated panels. 50 seconds, 10 megawatts. So as I said, if you see that reflected in your electric bill, you know why. Don't build them that complex. and the even layouts and the, let's just stack them all in there and pack them in. Use white space and use some design and make it friendlier. The 80s called and they want their spatial cockpit back. Okay. So, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not immune from criticizing my own stuff. This is one of my panels. I mentioned the display image mute. There's the big ugly bar with the clock on the right hand, the countdown clock. The image on the top, and there's a better way to do this, I know, but that's kind of an image, indication of the display screen. So I turn the system on, and that illuminates, again, green, right? It's going to light up green. There's your video image. Here's my indicator telling me that the PC has active video. Here's the one telling me the laptop does not. So laptop's not ready to be switched to. This is a screen grab, so that's actually the wrong. It says press to mute. It's currently muted. It should say press to unmute. I grabbed the wrong image, but that text, as we were talking about, changes depending on the state. It's going to give you a different prompt there. Not every control is on the same page. There's a button selection bar across the top. You know, the camera controls, microphone controls, screens, audio controls. Room volume, power, help button are always in the same place on these touch panels. So there's your dashboard for controls.
Why do you have 100% after your audio off? Why would it not be 0%?
Again, that's a bad screen capture. But good catch. It should say 0% because the slider is all the way down.
It's how much you go on mute.
Again, it's, wait, what do I want to do with it versus what's this current state?
These indicator lights on each source, those are different colors? Like the little,
Yeah.
because I'm colorblind.
Okay.
And normally I can tell, like the standard green and it's like on the opposite spectrum of red.
Yeah. So
But I'm having a hard time with this.
So it's actually green and amber. What I should have done is had it light up. I should have used contrast here. I should have lit it up bright if it's active and had it like a hollow indicator when it's not active. That would be a better way to do it. And as I mentioned, my dealing with colorblind challenges is a pain point of mine. I get into the habit of red and green, and it's, and plus, how do you build a touch panel for a new room? You copy and paste from your old room is exactly what you do. So all these problems keep building on each other. There's a process there as well for upgrade, and we'll talk about that.
Extron's GUI configurator has a grayscale mode, which I find really useful for that.
Yeah, and that's good. Yeah, if you could view it in grayscale, that will tell you if you have enough contrast.
Yeah.
Okay, so one other thing that I've done on this is I tried making that bar flash. The entire big bar would flash on and off the tape, but that really, people were really annoyed by that, so we took that out. There's also an issue with ADA regulations about the rate of flash. And I think it's 3 per second is the cutoff. It needs to flash fewer times than that. Otherwise, you may cause people problems if they have epilepsy, for example. This button I have typically flashes when it's muted. But I have a slow flash. I have like a 1 second. One on, one off. It's a pretty slow flash. You can see it's doing something, and you know that you need to fix it if you want it to work. So, yeah, so copying and pasting, programming one room from another, something we do a lot. It's an iterative process for a lot of us. We fix a problem, go, okay, that really is better, so next time I'll change that on my next panel, and then I'll copy and paste that one for a year until we fix something else. Brings me to my next AV rule of acquisition. AV programming is never finished. You walk away from it, there's something wrong, you're not doing it. So, as I mentioned before, look at alternative ways of imparting information. Okay, so we can use audio to control things. We could use it to provide feedback, as I mentioned. We actually did a project at Utah State where we took Alexa and we built an interface to a Crestron system, and we're able to use an Echo Dot and ask it to have the room do things. The image you're seeing in the upper left actually is one of Crestron's early voice interface modules. They still have these things. You could actually do Alexa controls with Crestron with their own modules now. But this actually we had a button for voice command, and you could say, Crestron, please switch the laptop. And in this case, I had a speech to text module. This particular one goes out to Google, brings the translation back. It actually printed to the panel what I said when I tested it. I said, I'm talking to the touch panel, and it printed that back to me. Of course, it didn't do anything because it didn't know what to do with it. It's pretty simple and basic stuff. You say something to the touch panel, and your result, whatever text you get back, has to exactly match a file that you have in the machine, in the processor. So if I want to switch the laptop, I have to say switch to laptop, and if it matches the text I have stored, then it will do it. If it doesn't, it won't do it. Alexa was much better because we had a whole table and a whole interpretive file that would allow you to say different things, like show laptop, present laptop, switch to laptop. Any of those commands would work. It was kind of cool. We didn't do it to make the room accessible. That's not why we did it. We did it because we thought, hey, this will be really cool, let's do it. That's why we do a lot of stuff. But we built a room that was accidentally accessible. And we had a request from the Disability Resource Office for an instructor that could use it. And we installed it for her, and it worked. I'll show you the Zoom panel really quick. So simple panel. Zoom also has voice commands. Have you guys used any yet? Yep. Steve says yes, you say no. Two different schools.
Hey, Zoomy.
So
The best one is that.
simple UI, but it won't do everything. It won't do everything. It'll just control Zoom functions. We want to turn on, erase the screen or switch your presentation source.
You can tell it to mute your room, but then it won't hear you asking to unmute.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that might be another issue. Toward the end of our Alexa project, we did one other experiment. We had the instructor mic fed through the Ring DSP, and an audio output from that go to an interface that one of our guys built to replace the Echo Dot. So no Echo Dot on the table. The instructor wearing the mic and at any time say, classroom, please, whatever. And that was cool. It kind of bugged people. It was a little like Big Brother, but.
Zoom will control functions in the room through JSON in the back end. The problem is you don't get feedback from the device in the room, so it's what you send and you hope that it does something with it.
Yeah.
So no state change from it. We have a small conference rooms using that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how many some of the voice commands might transfer across.
Could
We've done some of the modifications specifically with Crestron, where you can hit there's a room controls button that would appear on that left-hand side. You could press that and have it pop up with your other controls that are not part of the Zoom interface. So, kind of running long, so I'll go on really quick here. We mentioned language. We're talking about language. What do we call blanking the projector? And I'm glad for the feedback I got from you guys. What the heck do we call it, and what does it mean to a user? Is it a mute? Is it an AV mute? Blank the image? Image off? Maybe we don't want to say that because that's like turning the projector off. I'll skip really fast over this, just these next couple. Design thinking is a process that probably look this up. It's a good process for creating a design, a UD design. Involve the users, understand your users, which is empathize, define their needs and problems, challenge your normal way of doing things, think outside the touch bound, prototype something, start to create solutions, and then try those solutions out. USU has a technology lab where they can bring in instructors and try out different tech to teach with. It is really cool. Not a lot of schools have that. They have a specific in Robert that found the money to do that. So you guys are lucky probably to have him now, because that's the kind of stuff that he does.
Yeah, we currently have 2 beta rooms for just mimicking what you guys have done.
Cool.
Because of that.
Yeah, because of Robert. So if you need, poach Robert from Idaho. Okay. So, and I should mention on this, not necessarily linear. So at any point, you can see an issue and jump back a step or 2 or 3 to resolve that issue and move on. Like I said, an iterative process. Our usual iterative process is we build something, we throw it in a room, and we see how many complaints we get about it. And then if we're lucky, the next time we build a room, we correct some of those, we do it again. So put it in, let it blow up. So that's what I have. Any other questions? Comments?
I did, as far as the color blindness, I had a faculty member once show me that there's an app available that you can just take your phone and change the different color blindness effects, so you get a rough idea of what people will see if you touch.
Oh, that's cool.
So just, I couldn't tell you what it's named right now, but I had a faculty member point me directly to it so that you can put it on your phone and just see kind of the different perspectives of how people will see how your touch screen's laid out.
I've never thought about colorblind until 2 years ago. I had a student worker who I sent him to a room, and he's like, okay, I'm colorblind. He's like, and I can't tell what's going on here. I was like, okay. I was like, I apologize. So I utilized him to help me make the touch panel more friendly. And I was like, I'm not taking advantage of you. Like, I'm trying to help. And like, especially if you're going to be going out the classroom and things, I need to make sure that things are working.
No, that's great. It's that kind of experience that it goes right back to the access fatigue. He finally gave up and said something, but as we think through the universal design process, we're kind of trying to correct those problems ahead of time. So they don't have to ask them.
Yeah, and one thing that is good to use is not depending on the color by itself. Right? Not just a letter that perhaps words or symbols in addition to that, because that will inform if the colors or even the contrast can be differentiated.
Yeah, and that's why, like I mentioned, more than one. I mean, using color is great, but provide another way too, and even text on ones. You give a text description of what's happening. I did like his help feature in the Puget Sound University panel. I toyed with the idea of having that help button. You press the help button on a screen and it brings up a list of description of what the controls do and what they're for. It's maybe a little cumbersome.
Talking about touch screen, like the haptic feedback, I've been toying around with a Nemo monitor using a small PC where they're got for pieces. Because they have, if no one's familiar with Nemo, they have some really interesting haptic feedback to their monitors, but touch displays too. So it's something to look into if you have visual issues.
A lot of the new touch panels, like the new Crestron ones, the newer series, use HTML. And the panels will run on a PC, and they'll run on other devices, so you can think about putting them in other places. Even making them mobile. But, we've never done mobile panels at USU because, largely because of network rules. They don't want people's devices attaching the hardware on the physical infrastructure, so that's not going to happen. But yeah, other means, that's great stuff. Any other comments? I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff, but it's a starting point, something to think about.
Thank you.